Well, hello. In this podcast, I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience volunteering with the Nakavango Conservation Programme in Zimbabwe. And the reason I want to share it with you is it really stopped me in my tracks and challenged some preconceptions that I know I had for sure. And I believe many other people do when it comes to some aspects of conservation. So, just to let you have a bit of background, the Nakavango Conservation Programme is located near Victoria Falls, the town of Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe, and it's located in the Stanley Livingstone Private Game Reserve. So there's an upmarket hotel, private game reserve there, and one of the activities that goes on there is the Nakavango Conservation Programme, and the guy who runs it, Ian. He's been involved in conservation for quite a long time. I'm not sure how old he is, but he's probably late 50s, mid to late 50s. I hopefully don't get that wrong in the wrong direction. And at the time I was there, which was in February 2020, there were a couple of other people there who were running the program and involved in the guiding. And unfortunately, because of COVID, they lost their jobs this year in 2021, which is a real shame because to me, they really made the program. However, getting back to the purpose of this. So what they do at Nakavango is they try out different conservation methods. Some of those are to do, in fact, most of what we were involved with was to do with plants. So how to get rid of certain alien plants, which you've got to introduce one way or another, and then get spread around. And what they do, they sort of take over the natural plants that you would expect to see in that area, which means that the local animals can't feed on so much. I mean, this stuff really does no good at all. So there were a couple of plants that we did remove. One is quite small and just kind of pulls out. It's like a weed, and it actually the seeds get carried or they actually get eaten by baboons, and then they get dropped by baboons basically using the bathroom. So if you go to the trees or the bottom of the trees where the baboons tend to hang out, you'll find a lot of these plants growing there. So we would just pull them out. I mean, they're very loosely rooted, so they came out pretty easily. You just had to be a little bit careful when you're in a large area of this stuff because it does grow quite fast. And somebody did find a baby puff adder. Which so that was really rare, but you do just make sure you're making noise and you're careful when you're in the deeper stuff, just to make sure there's nothing in there that you would rather not meet. And what I found most interesting though was with the animal conservation. So on the first full day, I think it was, we had a talk at the camp, all the volunteers. So they do 2-week blocks, and I did 2-week blocks. So this was the first time I had this talk, and Ian was talking about elephant conservation. Now, elephants are what they call a keystone species. So they have their behavior has a big impact on both the environment and other species around them. So making sure that the number of elephants in any given area is the right kind of number for that area is quite important. And we all know that elephants are endangered, and there's a lot about saving elephants, protecting elephants, and they're victims particularly of the ivory trade, but environmental issues have also reduced their numbers, so there is a lot of pressure on the population. But what we miss out on is in some local areas there's actually an overpopulation of elephants. And because they are so big and they can create a lot of damage, elephants obviously large animals, they can get stuck into quite large trees. They'll debark them, they'll pull the leaves off, but then they can kill them. And if you take out some of the bigger trees, because if you think of it in a forest environment, the bigger trees create some shade, and that means that it limits the number of trees that need a lot of light to grow, but some of the smaller trees can then grow and take advantage of that space, and then certain animals will tend to feed on those trees and bushes, and then sort of hence down the chain. Now, I'm not an expert by remotely in this area, but I hopefully get the general idea, which is what I'm trying to put across. So if you get elephants and they start to destroy the larger trees, which is what happens sometimes when you get an overpopulation, it means the larger trees disappear and then the smaller ones start to grow too much, and you get an imbalance of the flora in a particular area, and that impacts the fauna, the animals, and what they can find to feed on. So one of the aspects of managing these populations is to manage an overpopulation of elephants. So the obvious thing to do, and what has been done in the past, is to just move some of the elephants somewhere else where there's an underpopulation of elephants, because it kind of makes sense. You'd think that would be the obvious thing to do. But the thing is, we're slowly understanding more and more about elephants, which might sound strange as well, because obviously we've been living with them for an awful long time. And we have a tendency to think we know all there is to know about certain species, or at least in kind of mainstream media. Whereas the fact is, there are an awful lot of animals, probably a majority, we really don't understand a lot about what they do and their social makeup and how they live. We can observe some of it, but there are levels of subtlety in there that we don't understand. So what happens with with elephants, is that they tend to split into two groups. So you tend to have the adult males, which for a long time were thought to just roam pretty much on their own. Although it was actually either 2020 or 2021, a study in Namibia saw that, in fact, some males at least do group together in what they call bachelor herds. Now, other animals do this. So impala, for example, you'll find bachelor herds of impala. But as far as I'm aware, this was the first time it had been seen in elephants. So we're still learning. However, the main groups of elephants are matriarchal. So it's generally the older female will lead the group or the herd, and that's composed of all the females, and then the sub-adult, the pre-pubescent male elephants live in that family group. And the function of the matriarch, because the matriarch is an older elephant, she's been around a long time through many different types of weather. So where there's lots of food, where there's drought, all the different things you can imagine. So she builds up this knowledge of where the group can find food and water regardless of the conditions. So she knows, obviously, when it's plentiful, it's not a big deal, but when things begin to get scarce, she can lead the herd somewhere where they can get food and water and basically survive. So that's her role in the group, and that's why it's an older female, because she's got these years and this huge variety of different seasons that she can draw on that knowledge. The problem is, when you take a group of elephants out of an area to relocate them, you drop that group, including the matriarch, into an area that she doesn't know at all, and so she can no longer perform that function, and that causes excuse me, all sorts of strife for the group. And what's been observed, and this is something that Ian was talking about in this talk, excuse me, I'm going to have a drink. Okay, excuse me, is that because the matriarch can't perform her function, she's likely to go mad. And they have seen this. They saw a large female elephant go mad because she could not do what she was programmed to do. She could not care for the herd. She could not care for her family. And she didn't have the means to adapt to the new situation. So the suggestion, this is where it can be, I would say this is probably very controversial, even knowing the explanation. Ian's suggestion was that the kindest thing you can do, because elephants also have strong social bonds, they have been seen to have strong family bonds. And in fact, I heard a great story of a mother that had lost a baby in Botswana near the Chobe River, and I'll perhaps relate that in another story. But the kindest thing you can do, in Ian's opinion, based on decades of being involved in conservation work, is where you have an overpopulation of elephants, is to kill a family. Basically, you just shoot them. And that sounds pretty drastic. But the thing is, it does save them an awful lot of long-term pain, because the chances are they're not going to survive and do very well where you relocate them, because they're just not equipped to handle that new environment. And they're going to then struggle, and they're not mentally equipped as well to handle the change. So I share this story because it made me really stop and think about my views on conservation and what the right thing to do was. And I also had the opportunity to talk to Ian several times when I was there for 4 weeks. And I mean, this is a guy who really, really cares passionately about what he's doing and about looking after animals and creating an environment where they can flourish. So what he was not said lightly, and it's something that I obviously wanted to share as something for other people to maybe think about. It's also a reason why I'm really keen on volunteering and doing volunteering projects. Now, they're a bit of a lottery, to be honest, and I think the main lottery is really the people you end up with, not so much the organisers, although I did go with one which wasn't that well organised. But my overall experience of doing them, and this is where, in fact, Justine, who was running the admin side at Nakavango until she lost her job because of the impact of COVID, she was really on the ball and very, very helpful with things like visas and the kind of visa you need for volunteering. I can't remember if I asked about jabs, but frankly, in fact, that did come with the material actually before I volunteered, when I was interested in doing it. But I tend to do my own research anyway, and also I was going to several countries, so I did my own research. But the thing about volunteering is you get that kind of hands-on. You get to talk to people who are doing this sort of work every day, and they've been doing it for decades. You get the value of meeting those people, and you're also hands-on doing it, so you're contributing in that sense. So we did a lot of getting rid of these plants that were not wanted, and cleared large areas. In fact, certainly in the period I was there, we cleared quite large areas of these things, which was really appreciated by the people there. Now, point about that, they've looked at various ways of getting rid of these plants. So obviously you could use chemicals to get rid of them and that sort of thing. But the problem is all of that, of course, has an effect on not only the thing you're trying to remove, but other things around it. So manually removing these plants seemed to be the best approach. And it is pretty straightforward. Once you know what you're looking for, it really is just pull these things out and you can get through a large area very quickly. But this is one of the things that was being experimented with at the Nakavango project. And then what happens is there's basically a group across certainly Central Africa. I think I'm correct in saying it's Zimbabwe, Zambia, Tanzania, I think South Africa as well, possibly Namibia, Botswana. I think they all kind of, so again, I'm now relating a bit of a memory, but they kind of share information, and what they do, they will experiment something in a small area like the Nakavango project, and then repeat things that have been demonstrated to have worked in some of these larger parks, which obviously require a much greater effort. But that way, they know that they're putting effort in that is going to have the result they want, have the desired result. So this is where, as a volunteer, you're getting out there, you're getting to learn a lot, you're contributing very much to supporting these local areas, and in the longer term, you're actually contributing to the wider efforts to maintain environments for all of these wildlife species, many of which are endangered, and some are on the verge of extinction, which is obviously a tragic loss. So that was the first thing about volunteering. So if you want to know more about volunteering, there are certainly plenty of organisations that you can connect with. I'm very happy to share what I know, and I can tell you who I went with. And I do really recommend it. And as I said on another podcast, and I've also said it in blogs, the other thing I love as a photographer is that, because I mean, part of it for me with photography is actually learning about the animals, because I find that I get more from the photography and I feel my pictures are better if I understand a bit more about the elephants. That's why I'm really interested in learning. I'll do things like volunteering and to get projects rather than just sort of scoot out and photograph stuff. Because I'll do my own research anyway, but I don't think there's anything to beat talking to people who are very actively involved in the work itself, because they've got a different perspective to what you're likely to find elsewhere. So the benefit of the pictures for me is that, first of all, I've got a bit more of an understanding of what I'm actually photographing. And if you've listened to any of my photography courses or some of the blogs, I'll talk about being a visual storyteller rather than a photographer, because I think that change in mindset changes your results quite significantly, because you're now much more aware of what's in the frame and, what's your subject. How is everything else in the frame telling the story of that subject or somehow contributing to the overall image? So look, it doesn't have to, that might sound like it's really heavy. In fact, it's not. If anyone who knows me knows I'm not, I tend to do things pretty fast. So it's not a massive in-depth thing, but it's just a change in approach, and it changes the way you look at something. So once you begin to understand the animals more, you perhaps are more aware of maybe the kind of story, what it is you want to say about them in a photograph. And I think that's a kind of healthy approach. So that's one of the benefits of volunteering. You often find that you're kind of on your own with the animals. You'll be there in your group, and there's a guy in Dean who was the main guide who while I was there, who's married to Justine. Unfortunately, both he and Justine lost their jobs, and Dean was just brilliant. I learned such a lot, and I would have happily stayed for many months more just to learn more, because he's one of these people who just really knows their what they're doing. He can read sport, he can read what's in the land. I was lucky enough to go with him a few times where we did some tracking on foot. We tracked elephant and rhino, and I just was. I'm just in awe of people who can really just look at the ground and tell you exactly what's going on. And I in the very modest way that I learned what I could from him. So that's another side to volunteering. Now, if you are interested in this idea, but maybe you're not in the first bloom of youth anymore, and that might be a bit of a distant memory for you, I won't worry about it too much. As long as you're reasonably mobile, I mean, you probably wouldn't contemplate going to one of these places without being reasonably mobile. And I'm not talking about sort of mega fit, but you can walk for an hour or two and that sort of thing, and not absolutely need to rest all the time, that sort of thing. Then it doesn't really matter. And even if you're not as active, if you're an older person, and I'm certainly heading there, there's a variety of different tasks. So some involve quite manual work. So I definitely made friends with a pickaxe and shovels from time to time, and other things just to clear vegetation. But also there's lighter work you can do, and so you can definitely be there and participate. There's a lot of younger people there, which is lovely anyway, because there's a lot of, the energy is great, and people are there to have fun and enjoy what they're doing. And so there's a nice vibe, at least in, as I say, I had one kind of bad trip, but the others to varying degrees are pretty good. And definitely the Nakavango one stands out for me. That was an amazing trip. So there you go. That's, again, a taste of perhaps what you can do in volunteering, but also I did want to share a little bit of the story of the Nakavango Conservation Programme, because once you become aware of these kind of opportunities, I think if you can do them, if you have the opportunity to do them, I would absolutely recommend it, because as I say, I think you'll learn a huge amount anyway about what's going on in the world, in the natural world. You have an opportunity to contribute, and if you are into photography and just want to have a different way of photographing things, there it is. So I'm going to stop now. It's been talking for a little while. I hope you found it interesting. I hope I haven't been rambling too much. And as I say, if you would like to know more, if I can answer any questions, you're very welcome to get in touch. You can contact me at graham@creativephotographyacademy.com. That is the sort of training arm of what I run. And I also have fine art prints, some of which are taken at Nakavango under the Graham Elliott Photography brand. So you'll be able to find out there. But but if you have any questions, please drop me a line, and enjoy the rest of your day, whatever you're doing. And I hope to speak to you again soon. Bye for now. Oh, and one thing just before you go, please take a look at the 2026 wildlife calendar. That's available now. It's on the website. There's a link below the description of this podcast episode. So please take a look, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye now.